It's the Anfield Wrap. It's John Gibbons hosting this week as Neil Atkinson tits about in America. I have got Phil Blundell. I have got Rob Gutmann and a man who's never heard that in an introduction to one of his podcasts before, Dave Powell. Dave, thanks for coming in. We normally do these shows one-on-one. I thought I'd invite some friends. They couldn't make it. So
he's on fire.
I'm having a great time. This is what happens when they let me loose.
Oh, I know. See, Atco? We're having a ball here already.
Just before we start, we want to let you know that for the 23-24 season, the Anfield Wrap is sponsored by Green King Sport, where football is more than a game. Green King Sports venues are showing every televised Liverpool fixture over the course of the season. So instead of relying on dodgy streams, get your mates together and get down to your local Green King pub and get closer to the action. This season, Green King have launched the Green King Sport Instagram page, which will be home to fan content, including a little bit of me and Neil doing some predictions that probably aren't right, loads of deals and competitions throughout the season. They've actually already given away Champions League final tickets. I wish hadn't missed that, and signed shirts, so you don't want to miss out. So drop them a follow on Instagram, and you'll be the first to know about all this, and also you'll be helping out the Anfield Wrap as well. So that is Green King Sport Instagram page. If you give them a follow now, on with the show. So basically, for those who don't know, because we're putting this out for free, but behind our very, very cheap and well-priced paywall, we do lots of fantastic shows where we get deep and dirty into lots of things, including the exciting world of football finance. And me and Dave have been having chats ever since the announcement a year or so ago. It's almost a year to the day, actually, isn't it, Dave, where there was the announcements that Liverpool would be sort of for sale, partially for sale. There was a bit of to and fro over what that might be, but there was a sales deck created almost a year or so to the day. And so me and Dave have been having a little bit of chats since then. And we thought we'd sort of open it up. But what's interesting to me about the right now, and I'll sort of start with you, Rob, is that a couple of times it's looked like it's close to the end of the road for FSG. And I've put a couple of examples here. There's the Super League one, where as well as it being very damaging reputationally for them, and they had to apologise, and it felt there might be no way backward for supporters, it also felt like it was a bit of a gamble to try and increase their investment and increase the value of their investment. So when it didn't work, you thought, oh, where are they here? And then there was the announcements, as I say, a year ago, which felt like either the end or a step toward the end. But it's funny now, sat here, where it feels like, and life can surprise you and football can surprise you, but it feels like FSG are almost more sort of cemented than ever. Would you agree?
Yeah, 100% would. I mean, if you look for, cusp moments where they would have been thinking about whether they should stay or go, I've wondered if you were in one of their boardrooms in Boston at the point City got off last time. Do you remember when they had...
That's another time, yeah.
Well, another time where it was a theoretical 1 or 2 year Champions League ban, big fine, and it went to the court to CAS, didn't it, in Zurich or wherever it is, and City got off. I'll never forget their original pitch back in 2010, I think it was they put by implication a lot of store by FFP and its emergence, and how that would regulate the market and how that would mean you couldn't buy success. And they thought their USP was their business smarts, and they could, which was based on their decades worth of combined experience, and they could gain a competitive edge using that. But they had to have this regulation in the market for that to apply. Clearly, that didn't apply in reality during the course of their tenure. And I think pre-Klopp, they must have been thinking, if this is one of the cusps, bloody hell, we've been tirelessly working, improving the revenues, and City just keep spending the dough and there's no regulation. What are we in it for? Then they appoint the best manager of his generation, arguably, in Jurgen, and things seem to work out really well. And I think that would have sort of calmed them. But your question is, are they more cemented than ever? I think yes, and I think it's possibly to do with the direction of travel in the game, and I may contradict myself several times as things occur to me during the course of this, because I've stopped myself thinking about crap like this, quite frankly, to preface this show on a daily basis too often these days. But I do think there's a sort of levelling out going on. Fans are the FSG out #brigade. You do think just define what you want them to spend, because we were quite close to spending what you want them to spend last summer, without sort of being too the gutter show about it. If we'd written out that cheque and been allowed to on Moises Caicedo, that's another 110 million on top of the 150 they did spend, I think.
You probably wouldn't have done Gravenberch, but
you can knock 40 off.
Yeah, but they might have bought a defender, maybe not Levi Colwill, but they might have bought... Yeah. So I think they would have spent clearly north of 200 million, or maybe, okay, you've got to take off some sales coming, but north of 180, 190 net, whilst also being amongst the top 3 wage payers in the league, well, they certainly have been, or thereabouts. So you're kind of getting to thinking, well, what do we want? Do we want Newcastle's owners, for example, notwithstanding the... what's the word? The bad aura around the Saudi League and Mohammed bin Salman and the whole regime there, notwithstanding that, can Newcastle do a City with the money they've got? I don't think they can. I think they can buy themselves a seat at the table, but I don't think they can necessarily move themselves effortlessly past a Liverpool or an Arsenal anymore.
The thing with Newcastle is that their approach to me doesn't ever feel like it's been that of City's. But also, it also doesn't feel like...
But it can't be, though.
It can't be. But the Manchester City thing with Abu Dhabi has always felt like Manchester City, their top priority. Are Newcastle even the second priority? I think Saudi Arabia's 2 priorities are World Cup and their own personal league. Now, their league...
And that's only just footballing
priorities. Exactly. Their league might not quite go as planned. They might just bin it off now they've basically got the World Cup. So you don't know how that's going to go. But at the same time, it doesn't feel to me like Newcastle are top priority for their owners, which I mean, I know they've got other interests, FSG, but it doesn't feel like they sort of go, well, you're secondary to that one. Every one of them seems to be like, right, we're going to manage this as well as possible. Like, it's not...
Well, we're their most valuable asset, aren't we, in their portfolio, I think. Is that right?
By some way now, I think.
Yeah.
I think it used to, obviously, the Red Sox for a good long while. I mean, you think the overall empire of FSG is probably worth about 10 billion. Liverpool equate for the best part of half of that now, I would imagine. And I had this conversation with Gibbo before now about, so the Premier League is, in terms of interest around the world from growing markets, it never used to be so popular in America. Now it is. It's booming. Other emerging markets, etc. Whereas baseball still only appeals largely to the North American market, and that's shrinking because the games are long. The seasons are 162 games. It's not short form content that kind of younger generations want to get involved with. It's harder to market. So while the value still grows, it's kind of minimal. Whereas Liverpool's continues to kind of thrive and boom, and that's going to be the direction of travel for a while. I mean, it'll be, I think, in the next 3 or 4 years, there'll probably be a couple of billion difference in terms of what the Red Sox and Liverpool are worth. So I don't know why FSG would be emboldened to kind of alight themselves of Liverpool anytime soon. But yeah, I mean, you touched on the Newcastle thing before, Rob, about City got the jump on everyone in terms of doing everything that they needed to really to get the wheels in motion for success before FFP really arrived, and it had no teeth. It's had no teeth since. I mean, UEFA have had to go back to the table, revise it, implement new squad cost ratios. I think eventually there'll be some element of a salary cap which will be introduced. It won't be. It's very difficult to do it in the confines, given the fact we've already constructed this league, which is very hard to put a salary cap in place because of the damage it would do to the things that already exist in there. The certain levers that would be activated. It's almost impossible to do. But you could do a luxury tax, but then again, like they do in baseball, but some teams would be quite happy to pay over and above, but there has to be some kind of element of. So the idea being, one of the ideas I've seen is a kind of a luxury tax, but where the money is then filtered back into the other rival clubs. So therefore swelling the pocket. But if it'd have to be significant, because I mean, if it's going to be 5 million, 6 million, they'll say, yeah, that's fine. We'll pay that to each and every one of you if it means that we get to land.
I'm always fascinated by the idea of a wage cap, and it'd have to almost be a universal worldwide thing to work, because otherwise there's a competitiveness issue.
And that's why it works in America, because
it's one territory.
Even though it's called the World Series, it's one country.
Yeah, that's right.
Apologies to Canada.
There once upon a time was a wage cap in this country. Jimmy Hill famously, he breached the wage cap, didn't he, back in the 70s. I mean, if you think about it, the free market in wages that has been exponentially grown in the last couple of decades or so, it's money going out of the game. It's in the game. The biggest win for the game would be to force through a wage cap, in my opinion, because you could suddenly bring all the money back. Well, you just cap it. The players are the individuals getting richer and richer.
Problem is, though, there's too many ways around it. And, you look at Manchester City, for example. Manchester City could get around it by employing players' wives and girlfriends as cabin crew.
Yes, but there are ways around it. But let's put it this way. It works in America, and I'm sure they're not soft at trying to get around it too. So I think with increasing rigour, I mean, these things are getting easier to monitor than they were when people could take money as cash, suitcases full of cash years ago, and this, that, and the other things are a lot more digital now. So I don't know. I don't say it can happen, but if I was at the top of football, if I was FSG, one of my big wish lists would be that would come in during our tenure.
Well, what's interesting, Phil, is that it hasn't, and they've stayed. And you look at what happened. What Rob talks about what they talked about 10 years ago and what they expected. They didn't quite bet the house on FFP, but I think it's fair to say that they expected it to be more robust and more strongly defended or implemented. That's the word. Than it has been. See what you want about Neil, but he knows words. Than it has been, and they also came to win, and they've won. And then the Super League things failed, and everything sort of that. Obviously, COVID, which was an interesting time for any sort of business owners who aren't also countries. And so, I guess what I'm saying is there was a perfect moment for them to ride off into the sunset, not least making a huge profit. They bought the club for £300 million. I would guess even a couple of years ago it'd have been 5 times profit if they'd have sold it, 4 or 5, wherever you will sort of want to say. It's a decent return on an investment, and they are an investment company. So the fact that they didn't at that point, and actually showing little sign, albeit for a very brief window, which we'll talk to Dave about in a second, is quite interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a line in Dave's Substack piece that Henry saying something along the lines of, well, what have we sold in 20 years? Yeah. And that sort of makes me wonder what their actual exit strategies as such. Like, we in our head think that their exit strategy is to sell Liverpool. Is the individuals, there's that many individuals within FSG that the far more logical exit strategy to me.
Well, they've even contradicted each other if you talk about the chairman and what he said when it first came out. There's so many different people wanting different things with different ages. Like, I'm pretty sure, Tom Werner and John Henry, I think is there about 10 years between them, something like that. Very different experiences.
They're very different experiences.
Are their shares quoted, people, by the way, on Wall Street?
Ooh, I don't know.
Their percentages.
Can you buy? Are they on the stock market?
I don't think so, Dave.
No, they're not. They're private, I think.
You talk about that getting any subset. They're very careful about who they let in.
But that's sort of what I mean about exit strategy. Is their exit strategy as individuals, not as a big? One day, do they just sell all their assets, have all the money, and dissolve the? It's
share value. That's what I'm getting at. It's share value. And if
absolutely.
The assets, you can keep high assets that keep appreciating if it increases your share value.
Do they not sell when each person wants out? Is the best strategy not for them to sell what they own
and liquefy the assets
and liquefy their own personal assets? That feels, in light of everything they have done for the last sort of 15, 20 years, that just feels the most logical thing. Which is why, I remember this story breaking, and I was like, this didn't make a great deal of sense to me. I wasn't sure when that Athletic piece came out. I remember reading it, and I was like, this doesn't make a great deal of sense to me. Not necessarily because of that, just because I didn't really see what was in it for them just getting rid of Liverpool. They'd end up with more money, and then they'd have to buy. They'd presumably just buy more, reinvest it. And are they going to reinvest it in a better way? I don't know.
They'd be leaving a lot of money on the table, and ultimately their business is value creation. It's not looking at profitable businesses and creaming the profit from that. They have so many strands to what FSG is, and there's always this tendency to look at FSG as John Henry and Tom Werner, who are both two men in their 70s, and that's kind of where the end of the road comes. It's not. This is kind of a generational business, which is in the business of value creation, which will ultimately, the ultimate aim is to become the biggest sporting kind of portfolio in the world. And you can see by the PGA investment that they're trying to make, that's going to be an investment for the next 10, 15, 20 years if that comes off. In terms of the growth of the game, it's going in different directions. They invest in that Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods' golf. I think they'll buy an NBA team in the next 5 years. As soon as that expansion franchise comes on, they're in the business of growth. There's going to be the occasional need to realise capital for acquisition, but like happened with the Dynasty deal, I mean, they needed a fix to pay down some of the bank debt accrued by the infrastructure redevelopment. Easiest way to do it: bring in another partner, pays that down, gives Liverpool more cash flow. So there'll be so many options available to them for the next acquisition project, and I imagine that'll involve calling, a capital call for some of the existing partners that are with them. Some of the private equity firms, let's not forget, like Redbird are in there for 11%. They're quickly growing into one of the most prominent sports investment firms in the world. Owning AC Milan, and that balance sheet there has been turned around completely, and they've achieved competitive success. I mean, Toulouse, they acquired. So they've got a lot of people with a good track record of delivering success. So that'd be the way they go. As you say, Phil, the sale never really made a ton of sense right now. John Henry said in that initial Boston Sports Journal interview that we're not going to be in football forever. I mean, no one's going to be in any investment forever, but they'll be in it for as long as there's value creation. And I think Liverpool's got so much. It's the American investment private equity market sees European football is heavily under-monetised compared to where it could be. And I think we're going to see more and more value created as Premier League's next broadcast cycle is 4 years as opposed to 3 years. And the main reason for the high values in American sport is because broadcast rights are sold for 10 years. There's no relegation promotion, but relegation promotion doesn't really affect Liverpool, United, I would say Chelsea, but I'm not that sure. Anyway, so it is a fairly closed ecosystem, but there's going to come a period where those rights are sold for longer periods, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years for the Premier League, and it'll be streaming companies, and the value will boom again. So I don't think, there is huge kind of value creation to be had for Liverpool, and that's their business. So that's kind of, it never made an awful lot of sense, really.
I think also they probably have worked out there's an attritional move towards a Super League. I think quietly, the fifth Champions League place, which seems likely, I think Opta are putting it 77% at the moment that there'll be a fifth place.
Newcastle and Manchester United having a great go at not getting that.
I know, I know. This fifth plus you can get. Can you get another one if you win the UEFA Cup?
No.
So you can't have 6. Okay, but between those two options, it feels like the Premier League, to go from 4 to 5 is a 25% increase in the chance of getting in the Champions League. So although we've seen a growth in competition with Newcastle coming to the party, that is a direction of travel, adding this potential fifth place. And it is a bit... and who's to say we're not talking about a sixth within another couple of years, and so on. And we're seeing already with promotion and relegation, the 3 coming up, likely to be the 3 going down. So bit by bit, attritionally, with the gap in the money and the opportunities, a sort of Super League may be forming, and we're seeing the World Club thing about to expand. You may see the Premier League be contracted from 20 teams to 16 within 5 years. I don't know, to accommodate you say that, Phil, but the World Club Cup
but the teams in the Premier League would have to vote for it. So you'd have to get 14 votes for it. They
may end up bribing the others with bigger parachute payments or something like that. I just wonder. It just feels to me like the Super League isn't going to go away, but it's definitely not going to come back as one big bang thing that upsets everyone. I think the Swiss model of the Champions League that we're in is another move in that direction attritionally, I'd say. My opinion.
So why then, Dave, was there this, short window of opportunity, which you describe it as in your excellent Substack piece, that looked like it might be a case? Is it? You speak to some people and you say, well, Liverpool's an investment, and it's always sort of been a little bit for sale, in that if someone knocked on your house now and said, here's £1 million or 2 million for Rob's, I'll take it. Where was it sort of a little bit like that? Or
I think so. I mean, if there was interest, I mean, we have now sovereign wealth funds in play, private equity comes to the table in a bigger way. I think if it was well over and above a valuation, then they may have considered it. But I think the Super League was bruising for them. both reputationally and in terms of future plan, as was the FFP thing. So, but I think maybe on reassessment, as things have calmed down, other opportunities have opened up. I think the Club World Cup expansion is going to be significant in the next 10, 15 years. I think that will become a huge draw, and that will be impactful for Liverpool. But sports teams don't, in this includes North American sports teams, they don't really sell. And I mean, you look at huge values of teams that sold in the NFL. Most recent was the Washington Commanders, I think. That was sold because of controversy surrounding previous ownership. So it was a kind of a forced sale.
The distressed sales.
They are.
Nothing sold at its peak.
No one is. Newcastle.
One before was the Denver Broncos, I think, which was I think Walmart. The Walmart owner bought it.
I think that was kind of reached its. I think a few people there wanted out, etc. But largely distressed assets. So the Washington Commanders sale was deeply toxic, kind of controversial. Previous ownership acquired by...
The other owners basically made him sell, effectively.
Yeah, and it was... a lot of pressure was put on. Phoenix Suns is another one which sold for a high price, but again, toxic ownership. Other investors who were on the board with them wanted them to sell, so forced through. But there's none of that. So if you look at the Premier League, you look at what's been sold. Chelsea was sold because they had to be.
Unusual circumstances.
Yes. Given a 60-day window to find a buyer for a football club. And that kind of kick-started the market into, right, we've got our first valuation for a football club in the Premier League for a long time. And it was $2.5 billion for the club. But the curious thing was the $1.25 billion for the infrastructure development. So if you pull that together, is that there's some question of whether that's a valuation of plus $4 billion for Chelsea. I don't think it is. I think the valuation for the football club is $2.5 billion. I think that probably still stands. But I think for FSG, it was curious for them in terms of that's the view in America was they paid way more than they should have done. Kind of Todd Burley and Clear Lake, etc., may think they paid kind of got it for a song, but from kind of investors I've spoken to, they were kind of staggered by the price that was paid for it. But because it was a short time frame, short sales window, everyone had to go, here's the money, yes, let's get something done quickly, and that drove the price up really quickly. But
I think they had to test. Do you think they then felt obliged to test the market?
Yeah, I think so, to see. If Chelsea's going for that with a potential capital commitment of $1.25 billion on top of that, what are we worth given the fact that our infrastructure redevelopment's pretty much done and paid for? There's a 61,000-seater stadium, a rich history, fantastic balance sheet, no skeletons in the closet anywhere. What's that worth? And I don't think they maybe didn't get the response in terms of what they're expecting. I don't think that John Henry would sell to a sovereign wealth fund. That's just a personal view in terms of, because I think it flies in the face of what they tried to achieve, and given the fact they're going to face a battle in other North American sports soon enough, which will allow sovereign wealth to come in and take a slice of the pie, which will make it more challenging for them in other of their sporting investments moving forward. I'm not too sure whether they'd be too keen to disrupt that, but yeah, I just think it was a short window. The United sale complicated things because within a week United were up for sale, and it kind of all the attention was drawn away from Liverpool onto United. But I think they quickly, from people I spoke to, it was a fairly quick pivot from we'll see what the club's worth to we want a minority stake. But ultimately, you need to know what the whole value of a club's worth to know what a part of it's worth. So
yeah.
It's a bit like, in certain communities, a house only comes on the market on certain streets like once in a generation or something because families pass them amongst themselves. Yeah. I can't think of specific examples, but it is a phenomenon. As you said, big teams at the height of their powers, peak of their price, don't come on the market. And then suddenly there's one in Chelsea, and suddenly there's a market test case. It's almost like you add Liverpool and United, and suddenly a market that's never open is flooded. And hence no one's buying all of a sudden because suddenly everyone's going, well, hang on, this value could collapse if not just Liverpool United come on the market. What if City come on the market, or Arsenal come on the market? Suddenly these £5 and £6 million valuations might tumble to 2 and people could have their pants down. That could have been part of the thinking.
And they've always been choosy with who they do business with. They are risk averse as a business. I don't think they shy away from that. Sometimes in investment circles, if you're risk averse, it means your returns aren't going to be as good. But they are risk averse, but they are also value kind of existing relationships, and obviously the Dynasty deal, which they closed in September. David Ginsburg, who's a former director of Liverpool, he's an FSG partner, he's their senior advisor, so there's kind of simpatico relationships that exist between both parties, and I think that would have been the way it went. They want someone that's either additive or someone that they trust to bring the capital, and maybe they can increase that as they go along. Because at the moment, Dynasty's first investment in a sports team, and it's going to be their flagship one, I think. So I imagine they'll increase their position over time.
So this, where we end up, Dave, this £150 million investment from Dynasty Equity, I think it is fair to say that's a little bit lower. I was going to say insignificant. Describing £150 million as insignificant just seems kind of silly, but it's not necessarily. It's certainly not the full sale that that was talked about at some points, but not even this kind of investment that's going to, move the needle a little bit for Liverpool in terms of what they might have been capable of spending wise in the short term. But also, what it would mean to FSG. Instead, we do get this small investment that was there to sort of clear debts. So why did we sort of end up there, do you think? What is the benefit to the club? And ultimately, is there any benefit, do you feel, for Liverpool supporters in the short and medium term for this group coming in?
I think that, but it first and foremost, it just solves the cash flow issue in terms of they paid down the debt and the interest that they've been paying on those loans and the bank debt, which means that the balance sheet's healthier, cash flow's improved, which theoretically means you can spend. There's more freedom to spend in other areas of the business, and that has a knock-on effect ultimately to the transfer market, or I think more likely kind of wages. I think wage bill this season will go down purely because there's no bonuses paid from last season, like there was the previous year, or not as many bonuses. I think that it solves a kind of an issue in the medium term. Really improves the bottom line for Liverpool, but also I think I don't know whether Dynasty bring kind of the expertise. We talked previously about bringing something else to the table, so we talked about Liberty Media, didn't we, and businesses like that where there's two kind of sets of investors. One's passive, one's active. So Liverpool have kind of passive investment through, or FSG have it through kind of Arcto Sports Partners, who they take small stakes in multiple teams and just wait for the kind of value creation. And then you've got Redbird, who are quite active. They bring on board other things, other parts of business, whether it's data businesses that they own, marketing link-ups like they have with AC Milan and New York Yankees, and they bring those things together, and it helps grow the value of the business. So, but with Dynasty, I don't know whether there's so much they fall into the kind of the former rather than the latter. I went to a conference in New York in October, and Don Cornwell was there, and he's the founder of Dynasty, and he was talking about potential for increasing their stake in Liverpool and what they want to do further on down the line. They did hint towards having some kind of input into aiding the growth of the business further on down the line, but for now it was just a straight kind of transaction that gives them a very small piece of the pie. I'm not too sure whether it was the valuation maybe that FSG would have wanted, hence the reason we didn't get any specifics over stake. So we don't really know how much that 150 million or so gets them in terms of an equity percentage.
Yeah. So that's not public, that information?
The actual equity stake, I've nothing which I managed to get my hands on or cast my eyes over, gives an indication of the actual stake in the club itself. Single digits, almost certainly.
Even the 150 million's not necessarily, they didn't put it out. We just know that.
It was given a ballpark figure in between, and maybe that's to protect the interest of both. I don't know, but I think the uncertainty over United not being sold. I think had United been sold for a price, over and above the 5.5-6 billion that was initially looked for from the Glazers, now they're saying 10. Which, while it seems really far fetched, I don't think. I think further on they're looking at how much these things will be worth in 7 years' time, 8 years' time, as opposed to next year. I think the sum may have been higher, but ultimately they got what they needed to pay down the bank debt. Otherwise, you're not just going to sell a bigger part just to raise money for transfer funds, because there's no correlation between spending more on transfers through selling more of your business and that increasing the value of the business itself. It might deliver it might mean a third place. I mean, I think Liverpool made the top four this season, just purely because of what they've done anyway, and they would have backed themselves to do that anyway. I mean, they've done it relentlessly, apart from last season, which was a bit of a disaster on that front. But I don't think they particularly needed much more. Certainly not. No one's going to invest money just to go straight into transfers, which there's no guarantee of that improving the value of your business. They're already a valuable business. They're already expected to be in the Champions League. It just solves a problem that they needed, and it gives them a partner moving forward that they know and they trust that if they need to call up more capital to solve another issue, then they don't have to go through such a kind of laborious and long-winded search for investment, where they can just increase the position of the person that's already there, they trust, and there is that kind of commitment existing already, I think, to do that. So I just think that's a really long-winded way of saying it's quite a dry relationship at the moment, I think. So I just think it's one which solves a very real business need, as opposed to trying to propel Liverpool into being the biggest spenders in Europe.
Shame, innit, Phil?
It is, yeah.
It does feel like there's some sort of levelling. Look, at the end of the day, from the fan point of view, it does all translate into how your team's doing on the pitch, and that is always seen as a factor of what you can spend in the transfer market. But we seem to be experiencing a bit of a levelling out. As I said, Liverpool spent enough last summer. And it got me to thinking, with all the speculation over Mo Salah leaving, and at times just ridiculous sums of money were being talked about, that you think Liverpool could have had a 200 million war chest on top of their 150, 200 million war chest. You go, well, they can buy anyone they bloody well like, but so what? What are you going to do with it? We've all got lots of good players. Do you know what I mean? Transfers seem to work. And have I steered this show in the right direction here, John?
Absolutely.
Towards pure transfer filth. But,
Listen to the gutter for more, Rob.
but you've got to be shit in the first place for transfers to be impactful for you.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Man City. I mean, we sit there and go, City in their bloody money year in, year out.
How much better are they going to be next season if they spend £150 million?
They don't spend that much sometimes.
No, exactly.
They don't never spend little, but it's not that much.
You think about the additions of Kovacic was what for me.
Gvardiol's a great option. He's 90 million quid and he doesn't look better than Nathan Ake.
Half the time they're not picking him.
No.
I just think, it's supposed to be small improvements along the way, as opposed to be the best way of doing things. You look at Chelsea, they've taken an absolute sledgehammer to it all, and now they've got to shoehorn in all these guys. Apparently from when he arrived, Mudryk was going to be a Ballon d'Or winner. I'm not too sure whether that's going to happen, but there's obviously a long game at Chelsea, but these things are. And that's the difference there. I mean, they're banking on not spending anything for the next God knows how many years because they don't need to. But obviously, football doesn't work like that.
They're gambling on inflation in the transfer market, right, to my mind, in that you buy somebody for 20 million. They've done a blunderbuss approach.
But they've committed wages to them as well, though. It's
yeah,
not,
sure.
It's not,
but okay. But if you've got them on, say you've got these 20 million lads on 80 grand a week, for example, at the moment, because that's about where you come on there, and they're on long contracts. If there's continuing inflation in the market, the player who would have been on 80 grand a week in 2 years' time, his equivalent might be signing for 120 grand a week, and he might not be a £20 million footballer, he might be a £50 million footballer, just because of inflation in the market, not because of any change in the quality. So they've done this blunderbuss approach where you could say they could all turn out to be bums, but to be technical about it, but the inflation in the market might just take care of the problem they've got. I think that's what they've gambled on. And in parallel, they're gambling on their own success, etc., etc. But I'd say their worst case scenario, that's why I don't think they're quite as mad as it seems. But what theirs is a radical new business model, which may go spectacularly right or spectacularly wrong. Long may it fail.
I just look at it and wonder why their owners, the man with no football experience, is the man who's been able to develop this and go, this will work brilliantly. Like, I just don't see how that.
There was a bit of the FSG about with that, though, wasn't it? They thought they'd be the smartest people in the room.
But that's what I thought.
So
yeah,
I think it's different forms of smartest people in the room, though. Like, you look at FSG, it was like, we're just going to try and buy players via these methods. They've done it's a completely rewriting of the financial rules, which I just think is a bit different,
and a hijacking of them as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a kind of a way of their own business approach of being quite risk averse, manifesting itself in terms of football. I mean, they tried to remove as much risk as there is possible in the transfer market by having a look at kind of the minutiae of detail, the data that might mean that that you can never sire a surefire hit. Liverpool have had a few stinkers, but as it's progressed and it's become more well oiled, the data machine, there's not too many that are misses.
Even in the early days, though, it could have ended up going a hell of a lot better than it did. You know, we're 3.5 years in, we're incredibly close to winning a league title. 5.5 years in, we nearly win the Europa League. There's nearly, year 2 effectively, we nearly get a cup double. I don't know that things weren't going particularly well in the league, but there was a real thing in the early days that this didn't work, that didn't work, that didn't work. But at the same time, it nearly did. And it was a really strange period because they came in and they did try to be the cleverest man in the room, and they were probably not aware of their own flaws and the drawbacks of ideas they've had, and they have got to hire the right people.
That is the crux. Yeah. I mean, we've got some parallel examples to anyone who's, I know this is a show which is FSG good or bad discussed, but it always comes back to it in a certain sense. We've got Everton, who had enormous amounts pumped into them. United, who've continued to be big spenders in the transfer market, both not making progress, and it's to do with culture and decision making at the top, which we almost can't put a price on. I think you can initially, like City hired the best in the world, etc., etc. But we are just seeing culture as a competency, and I think FSG always thought that is our USP, is that we can bring a culture of and a record of achievement and system and we can bring that. That is the asset we can bring, and all the money in I was going to say in China. Is that still a thing?
Tea in China,
or the tea in China, or whatever, it isn't going to get you anywhere unless you have that base competency.
I think there's also, just relating back to Chelsea and comparisons with Liverpool. And there's always there's a kind of a narrative which forms around FSG don't care about success, whether or not they're thumping their chest and singing along with "You Never Walk Alone" for a game is almost irrelevant. They need Liverpool to win and be successful in order over a period of time to maintain value creation. Whereas on the flip side of that, Chelsea need success soon in order to pay. For all pay for all the huge amortization costs they're going to incur, and the different. I mean, they've banked on being at least a Champions League side, and that seemed like a given until recently. But now they seem kind of quite far off the pace as others have come up. I don't think anyone expected the Newcastle project to gain momentum as quickly as it did. This season's tough for them because they haven't got a squad big enough to cope with the rigours across all competitions. But Spurs' re-emergence also makes it problematic for them. Aston Villa being decent makes it problematic for them. So, but all these things have to be paid for eventually. So there has to be an element of competitive success, and that competitive success for FSG, everyone says, "Oh, they only care about top 4." That's true because that is kind of the bare minimum needed over a period of time. You can have the odd fallow period where you don't make it because that's just football.
But also, treating it like that way means that you're allowed one season out, and it's not a disaster.
They have to, it's not kind of shit or bust.
Yeah.
It's there is an element of you can fall off occasionally, but the direction of travel has to be you're pretty relentless in your pursuit of being number one and being as close to that as you can, because that's where the value creation comes from, and how you deliver the commercial revenues, the continue to grow the brand, which delivers all the interest and the money flow into the club. You have to be successful because not every generation is just going to cling on to past histories and previous glories. You have to keep on driving that forward and being successful. Otherwise, over a period of time, as crazy it seems, people can become disinterested, and these clubs can lose their position in the kind of the world standing.
Yeah, I think it's become obvious to the big. It used to be said, I remember when top 4 became a thing, that there were these ownerships, like even pre-FSG, which were only interested in top 4 and the Champions League money. But I think all those ownerships have come to realise the one way you get top 4 is trying to be top 1, and so aim for the stars and fall amongst the top 4. That's the way to do it. I think they've all appreciated that.
I agree.
So they are both taking a risk, then, Dave, is what you would say. So you wrote in your Substack about you do the sums or sort of share the sums around what could happen to football clubs and why effectively Todd Bowley's spending how he is and why FSG had a little think about maybe selling and quickly sort of pivoted on that. But it isn't guaranteed. And, we discussed a little bit earlier, or you discussed a little bit earlier about some of the problems that that both clubs have, and Champions League not being guaranteed sort of is one of them. I take Rob's point before about expanding to 5 and maybe even beyond that, who knows. But there's also an interesting thing that you bring up in your Substack again about the fact that TV deals in other top leagues are actually falling, and so you can't, you think, well, that'll never happen to the Premier League, but I'm sure Serie A, when they were the biggest league in the world, thought that sort of wouldn't happen. Same with La Liga. There is the ongoing Saudi league, thing, that the more attention sort of they get, and they might eventually have all the best players in the world. What does sort of that mean? There's also the interesting stuff around the demands for reform in English football, and there's a reason why the owners of all the top clubs oppose it. It's because it's going to make it harder for them to make money, and that's why they don't want it. And then this general idea of the bubble bursting, which kind of always will be there, and I've never met a bubble that didn't think it would burst. And so while the most likely scenario might be that football club that is worth 3 billion now will be worth sort of 5 billion in the future, you actually paint a way to Liverpool being worth 10 million at some point. It isn't guaranteed, and so it is a bit of a risk. But I guess with any investment, there's a risk, and they've calculated the risk and decided more likely than not they're going to continue to make money from the football club. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, definitely. I think certainly. I mean, a lot of what I wrote, I had sight recently of an investment proposal into Liverpool. It was a proposal made by a private equity US firm to investors, basically around the opportunity that existed around Liverpool. I won't say who it was. It wasn't Dynasty, and it's not something which has come to fruition. But obviously, as an investment proposal to investors, you are showing the best, a great set of numbers that you think are kind of achievable in order to encourage these people to invest in this vehicle to then go and invest in Liverpool. But some of it made sense. So Liverpool's kind of revenue growth between 2012 and 2021 over this 9-year period grew at about 12% in terms of a CAGR, so a compound annual growth rate. Over the past 5 years, as kind of a small kind of portion to look at, I think it's been 8%, and then that's kind of been uniform across kind of the big
COVID affected.
So that's been kind of uniform across the big clubs. So even at that kind of a low 8%, not the 12% that have been seen previously in the previous 10 years, if you were to equate that into the next 5 to 7 years, the anticipation was in this proposal that it would be by 2030 £1 billion worth of revenue, and a club that is worth between 9 billion and 11 billion. May seem far-fetched, but I thought when I saw it, that seems very ambitious, almost kind of nonsensical, just given the fact, because you can never just envisage these things as more than doubling in price. But Manchester City made, regardless of the things we think around why they made this revenue today, £712 million in revenue. Now that's in 2023. We're talking 7 years down the line now. We're going to have a new TV deal which comes in. This time it's going to be 4 years as opposed to 3 years. I mentioned it before. One of the biggest things which holds back value creation in the Premier League, or driving those values forward to be the same kind of value as America. So the NFL, for example, $100 billion deal over 10 years. These broadcasters like security, they don't. What stops kind of your Amazons, your Dazns, I don't know, is it DAZN or Dazn? I don't know.
DAZN, isn't it?
Is it? Yeah.
I have no idea, so I'll just we'll go for DAZN because I thought
Phil sounded sure about that, didn't he?
Because you're in DAZN.
That's exactly what it is.
Is that what it's supposed to be?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my
I think
gosh!
so.
I feel
They're Canadian, and I'm pretty sure that it's like a weird acronym of DAZN. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
that's like a galaxy brain. Then my head's just gone full off. So they. Thing that stops some of these people coming to the market in a big way. So Amazon had the small set of games. I think they had 20 games in the last cycle. Is that there's a huge cost to get involved in this. Sky have been there since 1992. BT, which is now TNT, all that was in place from, when did they take it on? Late 2000s.
2013, I
was
think
it?
BT was.
Really?
So that was a huge, but all that's in operation now. It's kind of, the wheels are there, it's in motion. The cost of startup for this, if you could lose the tender within 2 years, isn't kind of enticing to some of these streaming giants. And the way people consume content now, it's mostly streamed, and the biggest way to drive subscription to anything is live sport. Live sport's the biggest driver of subscriptions to anything. And that's what they want. So ultimately, there might be some kind of Netflix of sport, or Premflix, whatever they call it. But there has to be longevity.
It's a better name than DAZN, that, isn't it?
I might start that up, I'll see how much I've got in my savings. There has to be longevity to the deal. Has to be long, has to be enticing, has to offer. You want to feel like you're getting into something over a period of time, which ultimately could grow. Premier League sells in short cycles because they want to realise the next kind of growth rate. But whereas if they sold for longer cycles at a bigger rate, that would kind of probably appease clubs in the short to medium term. But I think that's where the value lies. Is this in the boom in broadcast rights? There's going to be more commercial opportunities as clubs grow as brands. There's more touch points across the world with anything the clubs do now. I mean, they can reach fans individually. Liverpool have more data over around their fans globally than most clubs in the world, I think. So Barcelona, I think when they did the Spotify deal, I think one of the key things that Spotify wanted to know was how much data do you have around your fans? I think Barcelona were able to say, of our supposed fan base of, I don't know what if they claimed it, like 1 billion. It was less than 1%. Liverpool's was, in terms of a more conservative figure around their sponsorship, it was more kind of 25-30% in terms of what they know about their fans, which meant Barcelona's value of their deal was minimal for what they could have got. They got compensated well. But given the size of the club and the way Spotify viewed it as if you have real data around these fans in all these markets around the world, it would be huge value. They weren't able to kind of glean the kind of money they wanted to, which meant that they had to go around other parts of the business and sell off media assets, this, that, and the other to raise money. So Liverpool in a great position in that respect. And I think on the face of it, I don't think that 9, 10, 11 billion will seem that far-fetched in 2 or 3, 4 years, because if you look at North American sport, we're already pushing values of 10 billion. The Yankees are worth 8.5, 9, I think. Obviously, I think they're probably the most recognisable marketing in terms of marketing strategy in the world. The Yankees, I mean, the Yankees caps sell around the world. And
I don't even think people realise what they're
They don't realise, it's just the brand.
Look at the rate of growth, though, of LFC. Say Liverpool are worth 5 billion or 4 billion today. What was it 5 years ago? Was it 1 billion? Don't think it was.
Probably pushing around about that, really. Yeah,
so in 5 years, you've got a 500% growth. It's not fanciful to look at a treble or a doubling where from the current base in 5 years. In fact, you could make a case for it being conservative.
Yeah,
I mean, especially as we've talked about these endless opportunities that are still apparent in the football market.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think there's always strands to what FSG try and do. I think so. The LeBron James thing, I think people will roll their eyes at, like, it's just LeBron James. He's taking a very small. It's just a bit of a gimmick or whatever, but. The kind of the kind of beauty in that is FSG then turned around and made an investment along with Nike and Redbird into his entertainment company, and those type of content companies are the way we go. I mean, the way that will go. So it's digital storytelling, things like that, and that will come to play more of a role for Liverpool as they move forward. And getting in early in all this means they get a jump on most of these teams around them, which means. I think that, and investors see all this. They see the strands to what these clubs have. It's not just about here's a team. They finished 5th last year. They got a great manager who's got a couple of years left in his contract. They got X, Y, Z. They got a global fan base. It's more about the other things that all plug into this one football club that mean that when it does explode, and it will explode, kind of in terms of in the US in a fairly significant way. I think certainly just. Bubbling up just before the World Cup and then post-World Cup, there'd be a real opportunity to maximise the existing relationships that FSG have there. I think it'll be really kind of impactful for Liverpool. And I think the valuations will really start to rise there. They'll plateau eventually. Everything that goes up kind of must come down at some stage, but I think for a while it'll. Starting to see the slowing down in North America of the valuations of some leagues purely because they don't have like I mentioned about baseball, that's kind of slowed right down. Some of the regional sports networks so FSG own NESN, which is New England Sports Network. Regional cable channels struggle as cord cutting happens and people go to streaming, etc. So it's a big change in the dynamic around that, and the MLB has been a big part of being important to regional sports networks. So, but I think for Liverpool, they say they're the only truly global brand that they've got. All the other sporting assets they have are fairly regional. Everyone knows the Boston Red Sox, but really, baseball isn't hugely popular outside of the US. But yeah, I think they've got. I think they'll realise. I think before anything, I think we'll see other assets that they have around Liverpool go before Liverpool.
So what does this mean for Liverpool fans like you and I, Phil? Because what's been shown a little bit with the Glazers as well is that basically football owners sell when they choose to and when they want to, and if they can see the asset increase, and now FSG aren't under the same amount of pressure that the Glazers are, and I would argue quite rightly because of what the Glazers have taken out there. Some might disagree, that is up to you, but they've stayed. It looks like FSG is staying. Is it better than ever, in your opinion? And can you see a way that this potential increase in value for the football club actually helps Liverpool fans? Do you see them continuing to invest in the infrastructure like they have so far because they see that as a way of increasing their asset? Like both Dave and Rob said it different ways. They do need to win. They do need success. So that sort of helps us. They never seem to be the type of people who, like some people want them to say, oh the club's worth $5 billion now. It was worth a lot less, so I'm going to chuck loads of cash into this. They're not going to do that. But you see a way, in the future, especially now there is less debt, that they just become better owners, inverted commas, for Liverpool supporters in ways that Liverpool supporters want, just by the fact that they are still here and that the value of their assets has increased.
Yeah, I think you look at what fans want, and what fans ultimately want is to win football matches, to win trophies, to be entertained by watching the best players.
Yeah.
And the spending has to some point, to some level, frustrated a lot of people. The people who were like, well, we could get that there and do that there, and last season is probably the best example of, well, if they'd have just done this, maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the stuff that goes before that may also have happened. So
that's not also about resource. But most of the time, it's not about resource.
I completely agree with that. It's a lot. It's just on decision making, but part of the thing is that the resources were being spread in a way. The last sort of 5-10 years, they built 2 new stands and a training ground. Now that isn't free, is it? But also, there becomes a point where you are not paying for it.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know when that point is exactly, but there isn't a lot really infrastructure-wise that there's able to do after that, because
they could make the car bigger, but then we don't like that.
But I don't know how that would I don't know how that happens, for example, because you've got a road there, you've got houses there, you've got another stand that's just got houses behind it that you'd probably have to knock 3 or 4 rows of houses down. Where's the money? Where's the gain in that when you've got to buy hundreds of people out of their homes? That's just not something that to me feels like something that can be done. So there becomes a point where it's just like, well,
just to interject there, I think my feeling is that they will go for kind of ancillary development somewhere in the city, whether it's, so look what they do in Boston, and that plugs into the football clubs, whether it's a live event, whether it's in some kind of arena. I don't know, they've got a 5,000-seater arena adjacent to Fenway Park, something which, what can't they do as much as they want to at Liverpool? Host other things at Anfield.
We could have a smaller stadium where the women's team play, but also host concerts. And
potentially, it has to be
ice hockey.
Has to be.
I've just picked a random sport.
Yeah, it has to be something which kind of a development which entices. Whether it's a live music venue, whether it's building a new stadium for the women's team, it has to be something which delivers greater value than just once every fortnight.
But the Etihad complex.
Was there not?
Yeah,
so was there not talk of a hotel a few years?
Yeah, there was.
Yeah,
I
know
that
was. Just go by the way.
Yeah, there was a site for it. There was pictures. They had pictures.
I'm pretty sure. Was it
their pictures, not mine.
Was it not where the shop is? Was it not where the new shop's gone?
It was further up. It was on the next corner.
I know where there's nothing there now, is there? Yeah, okay. I'm just glad I didn't imagine that, to be honest.
Not a hotel.
It's about finding ways to deliver kind of value. So if you Liverpool's reckon, I mean, it's the heartbeat of the city, etc. So you've got ancillary development around the city, which links back into the football club, which then delivers revenue year round, several times a week, or 365 days a year, would be something which would make a lot of sense, I imagine. I've heard Sam Kennedy speak about this previously, who's kind of president of the Red Sox. He's a partner in FSG. He said that limited in terms of what they can do, as you mentioned, Phil, about expanding on Liverpool, expanding on Anfield, but there are other elements that they could look at. I mean, they've got this Fenway Corners development around
done a lot
Boston,
of work
huge, so there's lots and lots of ways for them to deliver revenue.
Then I suppose I remember when they bought the NFC tickets in and they were trying to get people in the ground early, and it sort of comes out that the Fenway Corner thing where they put a lot of businesses, I suppose, around, and bars and restaurants and stuff around Fenway Park, haven't they? That's the thing.
Yeah. It's a boulevard, isn't it?
Yeah, stuff like that. But I remember when they were they basically trying to get people to go in the ground early by going, look, it's £2 a pint just so you get in early.
Yeah.
And everyone went mad because it was taking money out of the pockets of local businesses. So there's a real tough pinch point of what is a good idea and what's a bad idea, really.
100%, and that's why I'm
you've got to find this.
And that's why I'm a little sceptical, Dave, on some of these figures, because 777, who we've not got time to get into, but they have a laugh, aren't they, Dave? Dave's writing about them now as well. He's writing about Everton. Good for him. Someone has to. Can't all be the ask. Where was I? Yeah, so basically 777 are saying that, we can do all this stuff, and, they're talking about, we could sell Everton fans loans and stuff like that. And I'm like, I'm sure there was a Liverpool credit card at one point, and there was stuff like that. And so it's sort of had to go, Phil, and we're just like, in the nicest possible way, less willing to put up with this shit.
Yeah, people just aren't thinking about it. Like, I look at how much money I spend other than football tickets to Liverpool Football Club. It's pretty much nothing.
Just your mighty red bed sheets.
Yeah. 3 sets, so it's quite a lot.
You got to have one more rotation.
I reckon the Blues are up for all kinds of shit.
I don't know,
Oh, I know. I think they are. I think they can be.
So are you saying the 777 or something?
Yeah, I think they can get them. I reckon they've
monetize the Blues.
If they could sell mobile phones that already had Z cars as the inbuilt ringtone, you'd fucking make a killing.
Some sort of glasses that filter out redness. Do you know what I mean? So your colour spectrum.
Glasses.
Some sort of contacts. You can't see red on the spectrum.
Yeah. Like, what would you see in this room?
Yeah.
I'm a Chester fan for the record.
I know, Dave. I'm sorry,
just in case someone listens to this and think, I'm sorry. What's the crack here with this Dave Powell? What's he doing?
Yeah, you've got to be careful.
I've got splinters in my arse. I sit on the fence so long.
It seemed like a good idea to put this out for free. And now Dave's panicking.
Hands across the park.
Yes.
We love our blue brethren.
Listen. Ringtones are cool. So ringtones are still
they are cool.
Polyphonic ringtones.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the future.
What was I talking about before all that? Oh yeah, we're not going to necessarily buy the shit. Rob, finish us off. I've lost me now. Can you see?
I'll finish you off.
Can you see a way that this is all good for me and you?
I can see a way it's not bad for us, which is a starting point.
It is to start.
Well,
because we've had it worse.
Well, we have had it worse. As we were saying a bit earlier, you can't put a price on or undervalue competency. And I do think it feels like people go, but the Super League, but when they put them ticket prices up and we had to walk out the ground and all that shit, they have made mistakes. But Jesus, as the years have gone by, we've seen some bigger mistakes at other clubs. We've seen the shit show very close at hand with what's happened to Everton and with Man United. So is it, your question to Phil was, is it a devil kind of exercise? I do think in an era, we said, call back right to the beginning of the show, we said FFP gambled the house a little bit on FFP having a potency to it, and it didn't work out. Well, do you know what? Just late in the day, without wanting to tempt fate, it looks like it might be gaining some teeth. Yeah. So finally, what they've wished for may be coming true. We've looked at Man United not able to buy the elite striker they theoretically could afford to buy. We're looking at Newcastle having to go a bit more softly. Now, maybe strategic. We're even looking at City not blowing everything on everything. So it may be that as the playing field evens, as we move attritionally towards a Super League of sorts. And I think one thing that was lost in the Super League plan was although it was elitist, it was trying to create an egalitarianism within the elitism, in that everyone would have a fixed revenue, they'd have exactly the same amount to spend on, more or less, on salaries and transfer fees. I do think the elite of the elite, maybe the world's top 20, are still moving us towards a position where they're all on an even footing. And I think FSG have got to fancy the pants off that and go, well, if it's all even money, we're the smartest guys in the room. They'll still believe that. Should we believe that? I think their track record says maybe they should. I think the test for them is to come when Jurgs decides he needs to do something else, and only then will we really know.
But that's the test of Man City as well. Are they the smartest people in the room when they don't have the world's best coach?
Ultimately, it probably comes down to who would be able to afford us, what are their interests, and do you want those people? And probably the answer's probably not really, isn't it?
Some people say yes.
Some people will say no, but what I'm in football for personally is probably not what these people are in it for. Not the people who would buy us. I mean, not the people who are disagreeing with me.
But anyway, it does look like it is to say huge thanks to Rob, to Phil, and of course to Dave for joining us. It is thebottomlinesport.substack.com if you want to subscribe to Dave's writings and read them before I steal all of them for the podcast coming soon. The Bottom Line is also Dave's wrestler name, and I stole that joke from Twitter. But Dave, I hope you've enjoyed it. Thanks for coming in.
I have, yes. Just again, for the record, I'm a Chester fan. I like both Everton and Liverpool equally.
And other Northwest clubs who might be listening
are indeed available.
I love the Reds.
Yeah.